Good evening, friends. Myself, Dr. Nidhi Darbari on My Education Treasure. In my previous video on teaching skill, I had explained about the types of teaching skills. Today, in my present video, I am going to explain about the specifications of teaching skills. The performance of the concerned activity is automatically improved through its learning and practice. How to teach is considered more important than what to teach. These skills can be defined, observed, measured, and controlled by means of practice. Types of teaching skills. A teacher uses two types of skills: general teaching skills and specific teaching skills. Teaching skill is a set of strictly overt behaviors of the teacher that may be verbal or non-verbal and that can be identified, observed, measured, and modified. Identifiable. They can be identified by analyzing teaching behaviors. Observable. They can be observed, and this is the reason that they have been identified. Trainable. Teaching skills train teacher trainees in using the skill, which can be developed through instruction and training. Measurable. They can be measured by simple observation, by making observation schedule, and by making checklists. Skill of writing objectives. It involves the following activities, that is identifying objectives, analyzing the task, and writing objectives in behavioral terms with regard to adequate learning. Skill of set induction. It refers to the development of cognitive rapport between the students and the teachers to obtain immediate involvement in the lesson. By this skill, old knowledge of the students are related and intertwined with the new knowledge in such a manner that there is no gap left for the students. They are brought to the topic very silently. All the introductory questions are connected in series and the last question has direct link with the topic to be taught. Skill of fluency in questioning. This is the skill in asking questions. By fluency means the use of as many questions. The teacher who knows how to frame questions well in the class is half teacher, and if he is able to ask these questions fluently, he can be called a full teacher. By this skill, the teacher asks questions non-stop and students respond to these questions without break mechanically. The teacher is so much competent in questioning that he frames the next question before the answer of the first question completes. This skill is specially demonstrated for recapitulating the lesson. Skill of probing questions. Probing requires that teacher to ask questions that need students to go beyond superficial first answer of the question. Through these questions, the teacher compels the student to go deep in the lesson so that their thinking power may be easily developed. When students sometimes find it difficult to answer these questions, the teacher provides them clues to reach the right answer. Skill of lecturing. The success of this skill lies in the effectiveness of communication. This skill is also called communication skill. By this skill, the teacher fully absorbs the student in the lesson and they do nothing except listening to his lecture. It requires the effective presentation of content by using appropriate devices, techniques, and aids. It is called communication competency. Skill of explaining. An explanation is a set of interrelated statements made by a teacher to increase the understanding in the students about ideas and concepts. It is used to bring clarity and understanding of concept, principles, and phenomena. The teacher explains facts, concepts, and laws in such a manner that they are able to answer the question of what, why, and how. Skill of illustrating with examples. There are two teaching methods: continuous lecturing method and demonstration method. The teacher should explain the concept through examples and by displaying pictures and charts. When students find it difficult to understand facts and concepts, the teacher clarifies them by giving suitable examples. These illustrations are given only after relating them with life of students. Examples are used to bring clarity and understanding of abstract ideas or concepts. Skill of stimulus variation. Teaching depends upon the stimulus provided by the teacher during teaching. A good teacher goes on varying the stimulus in order to bring in variety in his teaching. That way, he is able to attract the attention of the students. Thus, the teachers are trained in movements, gestures, focusing, interactional analysis. This skill is used to secure and sustain students' attention. In this skill, the teacher deliberately changes the movements of his hands, legs, mouth, eyes, voice at regular intervals to eliminate monotony from the class and keep students active and attentive. Skill of reinforcement. It involves teacher encouraging students' responses using verbal phrase, accepting their responses or non-verbal cues like a smile or a nod, the use of praise words and statement, accepting and using students' ideas, repeating and rephrasing extra verbal cues, writing students' answers on the blackboard. Positive verbal enforcement, positive non-verbal enforcement, repeating and rephrasing extra verbal cues, negative verbal reinforcement, negative non-verbal reinforcement, wrong use of reinforcement, inappropriate use of reinforcement. Only positive reinforcers are used by the teacher. He makes every effort to avoid the use of negative reinforcers which may result into any type of discouragement for the students. Skill of using blackboard. Blackboard is very significant teaching aid. It is very essential for the successful teacher. This skill requires legibility, neatness, appropriateness, continuity, simplicity of blackboard. The effectiveness and appreciativeness of the presentation depends upon proper use of blackboard. Skill of classroom management. By this skill, the teacher engages his students all the time in one activity or the other. The result of this is that the student, in spite of being fully free, do not do anything without the permission of the teacher. This skill involves social and educational activities that a teacher performs for creating and maintaining conducive environment for learning in the classroom. This skill is used to achieve maximum students' participation. Skill of audio-visual aids. It implies the effective use of appropriate teaching aid to make teaching interesting. The use of audio-visual aids make the students active and attentive in the class. By this skill, the teacher uses audio-visual aid in the lesson in such a manner that they look as if they are the part of the lesson, and if they were not used by the teacher, the content would be incomplete. Thus, these material aids provide complete form of the content to the students. Skill of silence and non-verbal cues. The use of silence and non-verbal cues is a powerful device to encourage students' participation in classroom teaching. The teacher becomes silent for 4 or 5 seconds while speaking in the class. The silence is maintained at a place where student comes to understand next point without being told. One more advantage of this skill is that when any student is not attentive to teaching in the class, the teacher can know about that student by keeping silence. This skill is used in the class all of a sudden, and student cannot know when the teacher will use this skill. Skill of recognizing attending behavior. The successful teacher is more attentive to note the interest or boredom of the students through visual cues. He tries to pay attention to each and every behavior of his students. When he is responded by his students in the class, he recognizes those attending behaviors without delay. No student of his class feels unattended any time. On the basis of the student's behavior, the teacher selects his own activities. The teacher also decides the interesting and boring activities. Skill of increasing students' participation. Students' participation means students' overt behavior which is observable. This includes both responses and reactions of the students along with their own activities. This skill involves four components: creating set, questioning, encouraging students' activities, and pausing in such a way that a student participation is maximized. By this skill, teacher does some activities in the class which increases the activities of the students automatically. For examples, he smiles at any activity of the student showing his approval or pleasure. He looks pleased in the class at any right response from the part of the students, or he praises any of his students in the class on any success secured by him. Participation of students can be increased by the teacher by creating personal attachment with them. Skill of higher order questions. In every good lesson, the teacher puts some questions which are higher order. This skill involves the question which cannot be answered by memory or sensory description. The question consists of rules, principles, or generalizations. Skill of divergent questions. Putting divergent questions is another skill which makes the student to think creatively. It requires the respondent to organize elements into new patterns, predict or infer from the situation. This skill involves higher order of thinking creatively. If you found the video to be informative and interesting, please give a like to the video to motivate me, share it with others and subscribe it so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get a notification. Skill of pacing lesson. The pacing of the lesson means the variations in the teaching speed. This skill involves just adjustive devices for satisfying the need of the student's variation. Skill of completeness of communication. Communication of teaching is a two-way traffic. Through teaching, the teacher is able to communicate himself fully. He is able to give knowledge, develop attitude and interest of the students. It is the skill which is developed by sensitivity training or clear communication of ideas and concept in teaching. The teachers are responsive to possible miscommunications. Skill of giving assignments. This skill consists of the students to organize and assimilate the learnt material. The teacher gives two types of assignments to his students: class and home assignments. Homeworks are considered a burden by the students, but the teacher is competent in using the skill. He can make these home assignments a challenge and a source of motivation for his students. For example, he can relate home and class assignment with the pleasure and displeasure of the teacher. The teacher can make the assignment useful for practical life of the students and so on. Skill of planned revision and repetition. It is a powerful skill in focusing and highlighting important points of teaching. Sometimes the teacher repeats the difficult points on any part of the concept or any good response of his students again and again. This is definitely useful for students because repetition or revision creates the atmosphere of conditioning. Skill of closure. The word closure means ending the lesson in such a manner that curiosity of new knowledge does not end. This skill is complementary to set induction. When the teacher ends the lesson, he creates a feeling by his closure that students were getting something very important. Now they will get it again soon. Summary of the lecture, seminar or demonstration is also presented with the help of this skill. It is more than a quick summary of the portion taught, and the students are also able to relate the new knowledge with the previous one. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video and don't forget to subscribe.